Thank you very much. After a fascinating and global projects, I want to bring you to small academic project. This is modeling of decision making in your gambling tasks. So it's a multidisciplinary team that performed this project, and I joined this project on the stage of data analysis. I'll give you some background and how experiment was performed, and then compare using conventional econometric models and some Bayesian network models. Yeah, so your gambling task was developed in 1994 by Bechara, and it studies decision making in both clinical and non-clinical populations, and specifically decision making under uncertainty and risk. So in your gambling task, participants select out of 4 possible decks appearing on their screen. They can select 1 and 2 out of 4, and 2 of which are called advantageous, that produce long-run net gains in long run, and some of them are disadvantageous, and 2 of them are disadvantageous, which produce long-term losses. And main objective of all these studies to see how individuals can learn over the set of trials. Usually it's 100 of trials, and whether they can select advantageous or strategy for during these trials. There are so-called somatic marker hypothesis, which tightly linked to your gambling task, which assumes that people are guided in their decision making, especially in complex and uncertain conditions, with body signals or somatic nervous systems, so these so-called somatic markers. So these are responses like when you have shaking hands, or sweating hands, or just standing up your hairs, or just beating heart, and so on. So over this time, there was generated vast literature on this topic, which studied effect, in most cases, effect of 1 or a few factors on the performance and decision making. And there is no systematic study that investigates effect of multiple factors on the performance. Okay, so primary objectives of this study were to identify the features that together can explain decision-making process, and also to study how these features interact with each other. So, and there are 2 measures that is usually used in this field, in your gambling task studies, and to see whether we are going to have the same set of factors that identify either performance or net difference score, which is usually which is a difference between number of advantageous moves and disadvantageous move over 20 trials. So this is how this experiment works. So this is how we collected data, and IGT. This is what participants see on their screen. So they have to select out of these four decks, and then they see how much they won, how much they lost, and total score. They start with baseline 2000 and see whether they can make better or worse. So in other words, do they study over these 100 trials, or do they learn, or do they not learn? So here for decks that are different, and you can see, as I mentioned, in the long-term outcome, first two decks produce net loss, and second two decks that called advantageous, they produce net gain. So, and here loss and gains, and loss and gains frequencies over the trials. And so some of trials are more risky than other trials, and two of them. And of course, this deck C and deck D are called advantageous that produce long-run gain, and A and B are disadvantageous. And usually in the field, total points are and net difference score, as I told, selection of advantageous and disadvantageous over every 20 trials. So they are calculated for 5 points for at the end of every 20th trial. Okay, this is how the game itself performed. So some factors that were measured was, for example, heartbeat detection. So it's cardiac and interceptive sensitivity. So when a participant was asked to identify number of heartbeats over the different time periods, so here 25, 30, and 100, and without touching their body, so or using some other devices. Wrong. So we also measured risk, and this is balloon risk task. So which this is computer task when participant can pump up a balloon, and with every pump it gets closer to the explosion. So there from a random number between 15 and 75 maximum pumps, after which explodes. For every pump, a participant receives say 25 cents. So an idea to earn as much as possible. So the more pumps is done, so is considered to be more risky behavior. So it doesn't give us risk perception like risk-averse, risk-taker, but it can be used for comparison of risk propensity in the sample or in the group. So other individual differences came from questionnaires, and one of them was body perception questionnaire, and there were several 46 questions, Likert scale with factors, with questions with respect to body feeling or with respect to body reactivity, and it produced 3 factors with body awareness and supra and subdiaphragmatic reactivity. So reaction of your organs above diaphragm and below diaphragm. So in here in examples that reactivity questions were focused on symptoms like frequency of gain or shortness of breath. So it gives other several surveys that were used to just identify these personal differences of participants was Big 5 personality inventory, short inventory, so 10 item survey. So, and here personal traits like neuroticism, extroversion, agreeableness, and so on were identified. So another survey that was used with participants before study was state rate anxiety inventory with, and there was trait section with rating from questions with not at all to very much, and describing general feeling of the participant. Again, wrong. Oops. So then were collected physiological measures like, say, ACG signal or eye movement signals, and measured skin resistance, and so on, so several signals that allows to judge about dynamics of decision making or reaction of the body of the participant in time. So some data, obviously some data challenges. So experiment produce multiple data sets of different nature and time scale. So, for example, subject from surveys, this is time invariant and assumed to be time invariant. Or IGT, so how decks were selected, so it's dynamic and different from trial to trial, and so on. And highest frequency probably is physiological signals that were recorded at 1 kilohertz frequency, so 1,000 times per second. So there are other unobservables that we may think about. So this may be, for example, tiredness, which is not in any of these categories, and may affect so decision-making process on each stage, or in affect each group of these variables. There are also another challenge, different levels of aggregation that needs to be used, and so subject, time invariant, this is by subject. So IGT, dynamic, it's by trial, and we have to assign subject characteristics for each trial, consider them time invariant. Then skin conductance, eye tracking, they have higher frequency of recording, so we have again somehow to aggregate it into the and merge with the main data. So what we did, we started with conventional analysis, and it appears that mixed models were employed, and better fit was achieved using random intercept, random coefficient model. So we looked at both classifications, so number of advantageous, disadvantageous move, and we get very good accuracy, and F1 scores something like around 80%, and performance, it's R square, was around 60% for both measures. But what another challenge we met when we used conventional data analysis, we just we introduced multiple interactions and quadratic terms there, but we cannot use machine learning like lasso regression. It just produced no result with different tweaks that we tried. So this all was done manually. And here for several, you can see in the table on the right, this is different factors. What we ended up with, that different factors are included into different models. So, for example, openness in personality category is only for decision-making, advantageous, disadvantageous move, while neuroticism is in for total performance, like total points model. So there's multiple challenges. For example, traditionally, all measures are aggregated over 20 trials, and this brings measurement error, and also we are not able to see dynamics of the decision making. Low correlation, fairly low linear correlation, and you can see that in this case, most we have a lot of quadratic or interaction terms here. So this tells us that correlations are nonlinear, but including multiple factors like interactions and squares. So it brings multicollinearity, and if factor with low correlation will also increase uncertainty in the model. So more noise will be added to the model. These models that we estimated are not directly comparable because of nature of mixed models, and they have fairly complex structure for marginal effects. So additional challenge is that individual factors, mostly based on principal component analysis, do not account for all variation in the individual responses, and this brings measurement error. So, and moreover, PCA creates orthogonal factors, and interactions generally should not be observed among those factors. And the most important, the different types of data. So time invariant, this is survey repeated data. This is IGT game itself, and transient data from physiological measures. And this what brings us to Bayesian network analysis to try for more deep insight into the data and into the decision-making process. So another limitation of conventional analysis is that we do not observe decision-making process at all, how people are taking their decisions. And this is what we started with when we tried for Bayesian network analysis with our data. So here only two variables, and this dynamic Bayesian network and DEC and score that received, DEC selection and score received. And this appears to be nicely symmetric structure, which makes perfect sense, and in which each DEC selection defines total score at each trial. And but what's more interesting, that a person takes into account two preceding steps. So it tells us about short-run, short memory process. So this may be another argument toward semantic maker hypothesis, that he is using not long-term memory, but also his or her body signals. Additional conclusions that may be made from there. So here on the lower picture here, I presented minimal augmented Markov model, and well, which also makes sense. So if individual selects in preceding two steps, selects most advantageous DEC and less risky DEC, so their probability that he or she will select this DEC in future increases. So several steps will provide, well, this may characterize learning process over the game. So additional conclusions that can be made from here is if we return to econometric modeling, we need to use transient probit or logit models, including logged choice in this case, so two logged choices. Okay, so then we tried to do variable clustering, and this is what was expected. So with AI, because we allowed it for just creating a cluster structure, not in correspondence of calculations of scores from surveys. You can see that it created several clusters. To my surprise, surprise or not all variables were included, but when we do variable clusters, so it appeared also that machine learning includes in different clusters responses from different surveys. So, for example, here in the first cluster, they just collected together responses from body awareness, BPQ, body awareness survey, from autonomous nervous system reactivity response, and in the example on the right, from Big Five personality questionnaire. So, and also from feelings from different survey, like feeling. So that is why we used here Claude LLM in order to give us names of the formed clusters. And here, what I must acknowledge, that literature has a lot of clinical studies, and clinical studies pollute pure academic studies. So we receive results that more likely from clinical study. So when I did data clustering here, so there were several categories created for us, which also makes sense and related to body awareness and to autonomous system reactivity. So, of course, there was a temptation to use Helexia, and this what we found out, that response and this part of the causal network built by Helexia. So here you can see what we expect to see: anxiety, height rate impulsivity, emotional regulations. But result very much depends on how we ask Helexia what to do and what prompt is. And here on the next slide, so I use different prompt here. Personal traits decrease, and I decrease IGT performance, and this created much more, from our point of view, much more precise and focused network, which probability would make sense for us. And here, when we just set, say, high risk, so you see low risk, you have the increase in advantageous moves, while when you set high risk, there certainly decrease in. So which, and all other factors that also make sense. So, well, as a conclusion here, so it's ongoing, and what we have found, the dynamic Bayesian network suggests that short-run decision-making process, and this may be argument towards semantic marker hypothesis. And then transient logistic models may be appropriate when we use econometric methods. So some other things that Bayesian networks allow having both dimensions in the same network. Here with econometric model, this cannot be done. And more appropriate handling of ordinal variables, because all responses are ordinal and usually included in these studies as just continuous variables. And here, not all survey responses should be selected, so we can just avoid additional noise in our system. So this is what I'm just in time. This is what should be done next. And suggestion and critique will be very welcome. Thank you.